Welcome back, Guardians, to the Idaho Vanguard podcast as part of Idaho 5051 with your host, Sonya
Hello.
and Lotus,
Sup?
and I'm Pine. We are once again bringing you journalism against tyranny, talking about Idaho and national politics, helping break down the headlines and bylines so you can understand what is happening in our world and our communities without panic or overwhelm. Today, I am going to be raging about our Idaho congressman, and poor Sonya and Lotus are going to just have to come along for the ride. So, but first, I want to talk about the war in Iran and what is going on with that right now. So, Sonia, Lotus, what do you guys know about what's happening in Iran this moment?
I mean, I'm pretty sure the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. And there's a lot of claims being made about deals and none of it's really trustworthy information. The fact is that the strait's closed and nothing's really getting through, and that's causing economic chaos.
Yes, especially in Europe, which gets most of their gets more of their oil supply through the strait than like the United States does. Although we still do get quite a bit of oil supply through the strait, and more importantly, we get secondary products that way. So the things, the plastic bits and baubles that we bring in as part of manufacturing or just our day to day, lives and consumption for making bottles and things like that is often made from oil that has come through the strait. So expect all that stuff to go up. And the futures market in oil. So oil barrel prices are purchased on a 3-month plan, basically. So what they're paying for oil today is what they expect it to be costing them roughly in 3 months, right? So $100 a barrel right now, or close to that. It's hovering in the like 90s right now, which is high, which is why gas went up again several cents and is still over $4 a gallon currently here in Idaho. And as of today, which is Monday, the 27th, peace plans have been rejected. Security has been rejected from Iran made a proposal that said, these are the things we want, and the United States rejected it. So we are back to hostilities. I think our ceasefire, quote unquote, is supposed to be going through till Wednesday or the end of this week. Um, but it's not looking good because nobody can
Has
come to the
that been
table.
extended? Has that been extended twice? The
Yes.
ceasefire?
Yep. The first time it was supposed to last like a week, and then it was 2 weeks, and then it was gonna end on a Monday, and then it was gonna end on a Wednesday, and now it's been extended for like another week or something again, as far as I can tell.
I mean,
Um,
I'm always glad
And that
for not, you know, bombing, firing, but at the same time, I wish it would actually get resolved. And I understand that this administration bit off way more than it could chew. Not that it hasn't already been doing that, but this is the biggest mistake they've made yet in regards to foreign diplomacy, it seems like.
well, I mean, it was
well,
it was go ahead, Lotus.
I was gonna say, are you also including like the straight issues?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's its own nightmare
Well,
fuel
the whole thing, right?
combined.
The fact that they didn't anticipate the kind of well-known reaction of Iran when it was bombed, of like just bombing all the neighboring
Yeah.
countries.
Oh,
Um, and
it
how
was
much chaos and loss of life and loss of safety and escalation of tensions all around. Um, and that it was like, again, a well-known thing that would happen. And then they just did it. And they were like, FAFO, right?
Mhm. So the strait closing was legitimately probably the number one concern with going to war with Iran. Like the number one thing that any strategist would have said, like they could potentially do that. And if they did, that would be a really big problem for the whole world. um, which, is exactly what happened. They closed it. And the estimates are that even if they reopened it today or tomorrow, it would still take an additional 6 months before they could make sure that it was safe to pass through because they've laid mines through it. Um, so they've got big giant landmines. So basically, if your ship comes over it and triggers one of those, goodbye. And there's all kinds of stuff, and so now Iran knows that they can control it. They know that they can shut it down, and so they have the leverage, right? They can't out firepower us, but they can absolutely put a chokehold. And the people who are going to feel that the most currently is going to be like Europe and places like China and things like that. But that is going to reverberate all the way back to the United States because we're currently feeling it, right? Look at the way gas prices have gone up. They went down for like half a second. They dropped back down to like, like it was like 4.15 or something a gallon for a minute over the weekend. And then it jumped back up yesterday to up to like 4.40, almost like 4.39 or something a gallon. So, yeah.
Is it economically difficult for Iran as well?
Yeah, but they don't care.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about one of the world's worst oppressive regimes, right? Like, so there is no argument here where we can make that like we're pro the Iranian government under any circumstances. The IRGC is absolutely terrible. The Ayatollah was terrible. The oppression and things like that, but they don't care that their people are suffering. They can create a humanitarian crisis within their borders all they want because they don't give a damn that their people are suffering. They haven't certainly given a damn that their people have been suffering for 50 years. What's a few more? Right? But it is going to create a refugee crisis because there's going to be massive amounts of people displaced by the bombing and things like that, which is going to bleed out into other places. But it's also created a whole lot of problems for all of the neighbors and our allies in those places and our US bases in those places because Iran can't hit the United States with the weaponry they have, but they can hit everyone around them who happens to be our allies. And like the UAE is currently really suffering. Their entire industry is propped up on billionaires living there to not pay taxes and doing
Yeah,
all
the
kinds of like,
UAE is worth a Wikipedia deep dive.
yeah.
It is very
And
interesting.
they're currently in a really dire straits because all of their tourism dollars, all of that stuff gone, right? Just like nobody's going to go there because they're getting bombed by Iran. And so there's a whole lot of other things that are coming down like a cascade effect, right? But even if there was no other cascading effects to our allies, et cetera, other than oil prices, you have to remember that oil is used in the manufacturing of plastic. And I would like you to, like anybody who's listening to this, look around you and guess how much plastic is currently surrounding you and how many things are currently made of plastic. And then figure in that that is going to go up in price radically over the next 6 months. Like the economic
Not just
pain,
that. Think about packaging. How
packaging,
many things do
anything
you buy?
that are wrapped in plastic, right? Which is not great for the environment, but it is the way things are
We could
manufactured.
stand to use a little less of it for
Yeah.
sure.
But
Hey,
think
maybe this
about,
will push people to do more long lasting, sustainable options. Maybe we just use it as our kicking point, right?
If we
I
were in
also
a
want you to,
position to learn from our mistakes,
yeah.
yes.
But the other thing is like the real economic pain from this isn't being felt yet. So the boats that were traveled through the strait just before it got closed have finally reached shore. So now nothing has going to come through there, right? So if you think about the way most large businesses and oil industry is the same as any other large business, they have a large stockpile, several months worth of stuff. That's why when the tariffs first hit, we didn't see the price gouging happen right away when the tariffs hit because most of these companies have, a 5-6 month buffer of merchandise. So they didn't feel that until they had to start buying new merchandise. And that's when prices started to jump up 8%. There's one other thing. After I'm done talking about oil, I'm going to talk about what's really actually going to impact the United States. From that. But the strait's closed. So all those ships that made it through right before Iran closed the strait have now docked. So all of that stuff. But now these companies are starting to have to use up the oil stores that they've already got, the manufacturing stores that they've already got. And that's going to deplete. And you think oil is, remember, protected on a futures market, right? So if we're paying $100 a barrel now, based on what they think it's going to be in 3 months. What do you think is going to happen when they start purchasing next month, or 3 months from now and things like that? When oil tankers are no longer getting through the strait at all There's none out on the sea from there. So, a significant portion of the oil that travels throughout the world has to cross through the strait, and now it's not going to. So that we're going to see a massive skyrocket. There's another thing that goes through the Strait of Hormuz, and that's fertilizer, or the ingredients components for fertilizer, much of which comes here. That means fertilizer that our farmers and ranchers, et cetera, are buying is about to skyrocket in price, which is going to in turn diesel fuel. Don't even get me started about diesel fuel, that is used in every farm equipment ever is about to skyrocket in price too. So not only are the farmers going to have to pay more to fertilize their fields, they're going to have to pay more to even utilize their heavy machinery to harvest their fields. And beyond that, other places in the world are even more dependent on that fertilizer. So now we're talking a humanitarian crisis in Central and South America too. Somebody go.
So, and all of that on top of the fact that USAID and all of that jazz, which a lot of our farmers relied on, is now gone,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like a bunch of these farmers, they can't
Yep.
sell
Oh,
diddly
yeah.
squat, but now they're paying double for gas.
Well, and they're not only not able to sell it because they were relying on like a USAID type of market, but they're not able to sell it because China basically pulled up stakes and just went, yeah, we're not going to buy a lot of your stuff. You want to put tariffs on us? We'll just go to Argentina and buy it from there.
So for me, this gets to a interesting aspect of war in that there's like a diplomacy piece in it, where so far everything we've talked about feels like diplomacy mistakes, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's not just Trump upset some people because he said the wrong thing and now China's pulling up stakes, and oil prices have gone up because we don't have access to the Strait of Hormuz because he upset people that had, permissions granted. There are literal, like you said, mines
Mm-hmm.
in, you can't call them land mines, ocean mines. I don't even know the words for this, and I hate that I'm probably going to learn it.
Yeah.
And, tweets or truths or whatever they're called about
Bleats. Bleats. I've
bleats.
heard the term
Yeah,
bleats, and I feel like that
bleats
is
about
really appropriate.
ending civilizations and literal schools full of children being bombed. And what I heard is that the children went into like their bomb shelter or whatever version of that existed at the school, and that didn't even keep them safe. There was a second strike, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I wrong about that? Is that what happened? And it's
Yeah.
just like, it's gutting. It's gutting, and it's war, it's violence. The diplomacy piece has impacts to us, right? But beyond that, like, I am never going to be okay with hearing about things happening overseas that are happening in my name as part of a democracy, right? The point of a democratic republic is that the people are supposed to have a voice and impact and influence. And that's what Congress is supposed to do, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that kind of is like, this comes into the fact that this is war, and
It is war.
that is a
Absolutely.
problem. It's a problem not only for diplomacy, but it's also a problem like in ways that I don't even have the words to describe it, because you shouldn't have to, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna figure out how. Maybe this podcast will help me find the words as we talk this through.
Well, and I think it's more than a war. I think it's a quiet genocide for as loud it is as it is.
How
It's
many
not.
Iranian people or
It's
what?
because
It's
no one's calling it what it is, but we're
no. Everybody's calling it what it is.
not
The
anyone
only
like
people who.
no one on like the news,
Mm.
like Trump, no one in his party's going to say it.
No. Well, no, that's not true. They say it all the time, and then they turn around and go, well, it's not actually a war, but they call it a war. They will speak about war fighting and doing all of this. It's a war, and they admit that it's a war. The only people who are not admitting it's a war is Congress. Now, the thing that is the most telling about the fact that this is a war is you might be able to argue that, like, under certain congressional powers and things like that, that you could argue that under the threat of national security, he does have the right to bomb these countries. Obama did it. with the Houthis. It did not make me happy that he was doing it, but he did do it. So there is some legal like wiggle room in that part, right? It's the same thing they used in Venezuela. It was a national security risk, et cetera, et cetera, et
There's some
cetera. So
precedent,
yeah, there's some
basically.
precedent for that. Here's the thing. What isn't included in that is a blockade. And a blockade is exactly what we're doing. We have all of our biggest warships sitting as a blockade to prevent any ships from traveling into the strait, even the ships that Iran might give passage to of their own like manufacturing and, import export businesses, etc. They won't allow anything through the strait, right? The blockade is. In order to have that be legal, we have to be at war. A military blockade can occur when we are at war. We have the that is the legal right. In order for it to be war, it has to be declared by Congress. And what is Congress currently doing? Nothing. They were
Well,
refusing the
They're doing jack shit.
they tried to pass the War Powers Act, right? And they missed
Mhm.
it by one vote.
Yep. Because the Republicans will not vote for it. They're just like, no, 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 we're not going to talk about the War Powers Act. Blah 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 blah. Um, the the thing that is the most maddening about that is they are doing war stuff that is only legal to do when you are at war, and they are doing it. Now, here's the other caveat. The caveat is that you have I want to say it's like 60 days to do these things before it's like you have to stop per the Constitution. Like the Constitution's like you could do this stuff for 60 days to defend our national security, which again they haven't even been able to articulate what in our national security was at risk. They have 60 days, so that is winding up. Like it'll be sometime like the first week of May that is over. And so are we done? Do we just pack up and go home, or what? Like, what are they going to do at that point? Can Congress, because at that point, Congress can no longer just sit there and be like, oh, it's not really a war. I've put up my hands because we're Republicans and we can't do anything that the, dear leader tells us we can't.
They
And it's,
can though, right? Like they can continue to ignore and abdicate their duties like they have done this whole time.
yeah, and throw our
That's
country
why
further into a constitutional crisis and
this
completely
is
undermine the entire
segue
foundations of our democracy and turn our country into an absolute shit show. Like
is
it,
this the segue to talk about Rish in
yeah,
particular,
because
about
guess,
Congress and their responsibilities?
yeah. So, I mean, they can continue to ignore it and be like, oh, there's nothing we can do, blah, 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 and keep abdicating their power and continue to throw us further and further into a constitutional crisis. Because at a certain point, that is going to mean that the entire document is null and void. And I don't know if they're willing to go that far, but that certainly seems to be on the table for them. And the one that pisses me off the most of our senators currently in this moment, right as we're speaking, is Rish. Because guess what Rish is the chair of, which means he's the head. He is the ranking member. He's the dude in charge of the Foreign Relations Committee. And the Foreign Relations Committee is predominantly charged with understanding war and national security through the threat of direct conflict. He is literally the guy who is supposed to be in charge of figuring out whether or not we can go to war. And he is sitting on his butt and he has said nothing, nothing to anyone about it.
How old is he?
Like 8,200.
So he should have more than enough experience with America going into wars that we
Yeah.
don't need to fucking
He's
be
been
involved
serving in
in.
he's been serving in office. He entered the state legislature in like 1977. He's been
He was
serving
born
in
in 43.
He has been in office longer than America has been fucking in the Middle East.
Yep.
And that's a problem
82.
on many, many levels.
Yeah, he entered Congress in like
77, I think it
no,
was.
he entered the state legislature in 77. And
Okay.
before that, he served on like city councils and things like that. He
And I
entered
know that people
Congress.
were looking to
And
primary him. Like, here's a quick shout out. Primaries are May 19th. If you are
yes,
registered Republican,
vote.
please go vote in the primaries.
If you are not registered Republican, vote in the primaries anyways. Just vote for the
League
Democrats
of,
and the
Remember,
League
independents.
of
you can
Women
only vote in
Voters.
one primary.
You can only vote in
So
one primary. It's
so
whichever one
pick
you're registered in.
whichever one you're registered in.
No, the
If you're not
Democrats is an
registered,
open
get
primary.
registered.
You don't have to be a Democrat to vote in the Democratic primaries.
But I think you can only vote in one.
Yeah. You can. You can only vote in one. You
That's
can either
Oh,
vote on the Democratic or the Republican primary. You can't vote in either, but you don't have to be a registered Democrat to vote in the Democratic primaries.
but you do have to be registered to vote,
interesting. So I still
is what
haven't.
I was
I've been
saying.
registered Republican for a decade now.
Yeah,
Um,
Republicans are a close primary.
Pushing a decade. Um, anyway, League of Women Voters has some information on candidates. Like obviously, some people like Brad Little, like the incumbents, haven't bothered to fill out
Nope.
the questions, sort of like Ballotopedia. Um, but I'm trying to put together, at least for me, but then we'll see if I come up with something that's shareable. Just a resources collection. I'm going to just do it in like a Google Sheet, I think is going to be the format that works best for the moment. We'll see if I have something that's worth releasing that people can riff off of to do their own decision making on which primary candidate. Because the issue is, especially like with the governor's race, I'm guessing it's also the same for Rish's. I should have brushed up before we talked. That you can get a split vote when it comes to the primaries because the incumbent's always going to get a ton of votes from people that show up and want to vote, but are thinking, well, I haven't heard anything bad. So I'll just vote for the name I recognize. But then when it comes to trying to replace them and get them out of office, if there's multiple people running, you can get a split vote. So yeah, but there are people primarying him. So show up May 19th, do your homework. I'm trying to help do my part of the homework.
Yeah,
Lotus,
I
did you
mean,
have something?
No, you're fine. I think you covered what I was going to say, so it's good. I
yeah,
just didn't pick my mic up fast enough.
yeah. No, yes, May 19th is the primaries. You should have already gotten your mail-in ballots. Remember that those mail-in ballots need to be sent days in advance, because the United States Postal Service has been gutted because they're trying to privatize it.
And they also don't count the posted date anymore. They count it from
No.
the day they get it, not the day you mailed it, which
Yep.
is rude as hell, but it's what they're doing.
So yeah. So we're currently at war and we're spending billions of dollars a day, at least it's like close to $1 billion a day to be involved in this war. God only knows what the economic pain is going to be like long term across the board. Uh, God only knows what the humanitarian crisis is going to look like when we're talking about all the people who've been displaced by all the bombings and things like that. And the one senator from Idaho who has any sort of say in the matter has said absolutely bupkis about any of it.
And if he's not disagreeing with it, he is agreeing with it,
Yeah. Well,
right? If
yeah,
you don't
he's
pick a
totally
side, you've picked a
complicit.
side.
Hmm. Yeah. He's completely complicit. And despite the fact that he brags about on his reelection, his campaign website, about how he put forth a resolution that the United States government had to balance its budget by law. And I'm like, okay, dude, um, I, please explain to me how we're going to balance the budget and spend less money to pay off debt by spending almost $1 billion a day bombing another country for no articulated reason. Like they still have not been able to give us a coherent reason for doing this other than Netanyahu wanted to. And they haven't even articulated that. That's
Honestly,
been articulated by others.
it feels like, and this is going to sound very millennial, it feels like we need to go no contact with our really shitty boomer parents. In this case, Rish, Fulcher, Crapo, Little, all of them. Because at this point, they don't understand the economy today for the average person
Well, Crapo's not up for
or for
reelection this year,
themselves.
so I
Can't do
have
anything
less
this
of a
year, but
yeah,
he's on my list.
he's on my list. Don't worry. We'll get to him. But no, they don't. Like Rish is one of the richest senators in Congress. He's worth upwards of $50 million. Some estimates even say over 80. And he's wealthy. He's been wealthy for uh, generations, what amounts to generations, and he has no concept of what it's like to actually live in Idaho at this moment. And he's clearly not even remotely concerned about any of it because he doesn't feel any need to answer anybody's questions or speak out on social media. He silences the comments, which, by the way, is illegal. Um, It is illegal to silence comments on your official government social media.
So basically,
Just in
like,
case
we
they
just
didn't
have to
know.
keep chipping away at building a movement that is actually going to be responsive to the people instead of responsive to donors.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that happens by voting in primaries, and that happens by getting people aware and interested to the point where they will vote in primaries. And, hopefully, like in Idaho, the Democratic Party is Idaho, right? It's not the same as the National Democratic Party.
No.
Um,
And it shouldn't be.
and it's been untended to on a national level to the point where I I mean, there's definitely politics that I've heard of within the party, but like there's not as much big money issues that I'm seeing in Idaho in that party. So a lot of the candidates that I've gotten to meet, and some of the Republican ones that I've heard of, or one I've gotten to meet, I'm hopeful about the people that are wanting to show up in primary are more
Well,
like honest. They haven't been soaking in the corruption seas as long.
yeah.
Um, and I think that that's what we have to keep chipping away at, right? Is getting basically what amounts to term limits, but because we can't impose term limits, we have to just get fresh people in there that aren't so heavily funded by
Dark money.
mega donors.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So
that's how we're
here's
going
my
to see
theory.
meaningful change.
I used to be like, we absolutely have to have term limits, term limits, term limits, term limits. And I've actually come away from that idea because we actually have term limits built in to the system, right? You simply just don't elect them again. Like that's it. There's your term limit. Here's the problem. The actual problem is that we have a voting populace that doesn't engage with civics. We don't teach civics in high school on a regular, like a consistent basis across the country. I don't ever recall. I took a government class in high school, but it was more about like learning how the government operates rather than like learning how to be civically engaged. And I'm a disenfranchised millennial for sure, but we have a voting populace that chooses not to engage, and that is by design, certainly by these mega donors. And because they choose not to engage, the incumbents kind of just rely upon that. They're just like, the people who voted for me before will vote again because I have name recognition. We have term limits built into the system. We can simply just get rid of these people because they're not doing a good job, but it does require a voting populace that's actively engaged and paying attention, and then gets out and shows up at the primaries and shows up on at the midterms, and not just once every 4 years.
Well, and I think part of that too is like millennials, a lot of us I remember growing up and like going through that econ and government class, right, in high school.
Yeah.
And even then everyone, like, granted, Obama had like just won. And
Oh, you're a
everyone
baby.
and everyone was
Yes.
still like
Youth.
everyone was still like, "Oh, my singular vote doesn't matter, blah 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 blah," either because they were convinced he was going to win or they were convinced he was going to lose. And that's the thing, right? Is like the
Mhm.
propaganda
Tragedy of the commons.
from the other
Yeah.
side is that, oh, well, this person's automatically going to win, so why are you even going to vote? But if they can convince 10,000 people that your singular vote doesn't matter, 10,000 people won't vote. And
Especially when a
that's,
lot of races are won by thousands, or in the case of
or
local elections,
hundreds.
like won by a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, like Garden City Council election, I think it was like 40 votes or something stupid that the person won by. Like it was really a small number of people that had just could have showed up and cast a vote. And it's really interesting, but yeah, it's this idea that, oh, it doesn't matter if I vote. And especially here in Idaho, if you're someone who is not interested in voting on a Republican ticket, it can feel a little helpless, but it's not hopeless. It's not. And one of the things that being actively civically engaged, going back to Sonia's point about this idea that election, like Democrats don't invest any money in this state because they feel it's a lost cause. Well, like if we show up and we start voting and we start proving that there is stuff to be here, there will be investment for, interesting people to start running for office, right? Because right now, running for office on these small levels, like, it is incredibly challenging to get any support, especially from, like, the Democratic Party and things like that. It's hard because there's not anything to go around, but also, like, people are having to learn kind of the hard way, and I find myself working with Idaho 5051 in a weird position of helping and advise people on how to run for office. I've got a little bit of a marketing background, so that's kind of where I come at it from. But it's this idea that if you think it doesn't matter, then it doesn't matter that you show up. But it does so matter that people show up and vote. You just please vote, for goodness sakes. Look at what happened in Hungary.
Well, I mean, also, a lot of people, I think, are still in Idaho, whether they realize how disenfranchised they are or not. They don't tie it to their voting history.
Yeah.
If you've noticed in the last 20 some odd years that your district, your county, your whatever has suddenly started to go downhill, maybe you don't have a fire department anymore. Who are you going to call if your house catches on fire? Because one city in Idaho just last year voted to not fund their own fire department. And that's because partially there's a lot of people who just don't give a damn about your local economy and your local businesses. Stop just following the letter that you were taught. Try something new.
Meaning
Maybe it'll
R
work.
or D, the letter
Yeah,
you were
maybe an
taught.
I.
Yeah.
Maybe if you've only ever voted Democrat, maybe open your mind and see if you agree with the Republican who's running in your area.
You
Look
don't.
at the
But in
independent.
Idaho, mostly the other way around
I know. I'm
because
just being
the
open-minded.
established power is
Yes.
Republican in
Yeah.
Idaho, just because the vast majority of people have been raised Team Red. And it's not
Yes.
even to do with what, like, they've never really examined it for themselves. It's literally like
No, no. Most of
how
them
they
have
were
not.
raised to vote.
Yes. I was just
No, you're
trying to be
good.
open-minded
Sorry.
and be a little facetious about it. But yes, you are
You were
correct. It
great.
is
I just
traditionally red.
couldn't help myself.
But yes.
That's a really good point.
Mm.
And in the meanwhile, while we struggle to birth a system that listens to the people, we are not voiceless, right? Like, this seems like a good time. I don't think it's in our show notes here, but to talk about May Day Strong and
Yep.
the practice of voting with your dollar
Mhm. So,
and with
one
your
of the
labor.
things that is universal across the board for conservatives is about the only language they actually understand is money. Like, that is the point blank, the only language that they speak. It's true on the Democrat side as well, but it's a little less so and it's a little less obvious. So, what has happened in this country is that the elite upper class, and not for the first time, has kind of taken over everything. And they've created this massive wealth disparity, not for the first time. I need everyone to remember that all of this stuff began with Reagan, but it's really just a repeat of things that have happened before. Um,
And also the Gilded Age sucked for everyone that wasn't rich. Just
yeah.
don't forget that.
And so they've got all of this massive economic power, which in this country results in having actual power. But the reality of it is rich people don't generate wealth, working people do. And so May Day Strong, the idea behind it is to talk about is it comes from a union organizing. May Day is a union holiday to celebrate one of the biggest victories in union history in the late 1800s. But with unionizing labor workers and things like that. And so May Day Strong is designed to is as a protest and a rally in which on May 1st, you're not supposed to go to work, you're not supposed to go to school, you're not supposed to go shopping. I don't know how much of that is totally realistic to get in complete buyout, but the idea behind it is to start using your economic will to start forcing people to make changes. And because it's workers who actually generate wealth, not showing up to work is actually a big problem for wealthy people because it's workers who spend their money and keep the economy afloat, not spending your money at mega corporations like Walmart or um, I don't know any of the other evil conglomerates that are out there taking advantage of people is a really good way
Target.
to send a message. Target, yeah, we're down with Target now. And those kind of things. And then not going to school is a way for students like at the college level and the high school level to start showing solidarity of like, no, we can just simply withdraw from the system, right? And you, what are you going to do about it? And so this idea is that we're working with several other organizations across the country to promote May Day Strong. And Idaho 5051 is hosting a rally at 4:30 on May Day, which is May 1st, which is Friday, that is down at the Capitol building with an eye towards helping people understand how they can band together to create economic influence, not just in terms of like pooling your resources, but in terms of pooling your experience, your expertise, and your political willpower to join forces and fight back. It's that against what's being done to you. When Republicans in particular talk about giving tax breaks, they are never talking about you, ever. Historically, since the 1980s, they have never given tax breaks to actual working people. It's always been to the upper crust. This idea of trickle down economics, which after 50 years we've kind of proven doesn't work at all. In fact, it makes things worse.
We
And so,
tried. We gave it an
yep,
honest try.
to the detriment of working people.
More than an
Oh,
honest try. We
100%.
have kept hitting our head against that wall.
Yeah, I mean, because
I
they're
say that
never
as somebody
talking about.
who does believe that there can be healthy checks and balances within a free economy, but you have to
Yep,
keep it. You have to actually like be aware of the power structures and that government is more than just the collection of people that come together and vote in a democratic republic. Like that's
yep,
actually one of the healthier forms of government we have, and it should be stronger because the other forms of government are what amount to like what is it, the word fiats or something, or like the little
yep.
fiefdoms that it's
Fiefdoms,
like
yeah.
Fiefdoms, yeah.
Amazon having so much control over how commerce flows becomes
Yep.
its own form of government, um, because it functions with what we can access, right?
We
And I
call
mean,
it an
in utility,
oligarchy in terms of government.
it is.
Yeah.
Um,
It's businesses running the government, right?
but that gets into
So,
like the political education piece that
yeah.
I'm trying to learn as an adult beyond. And I did well in school. It's not like I didn't show up to class or pay attention or anything. I did, but there was a lot of things that were missing to help me be an informed voter and
Yep.
not somebody who voted based on what color team I was just raised to be affiliated and kind of view myself as being with.
Yeah. There is a lot
So,
missing from
still registered
education.
Republican, by the way.
Yeah.
Saying that as somebody who votes, has always voted freely, um, but registered as a Republican because I was like, especially in Idaho, and based on
Yeah.
how I was raised, it just makes so much sense for me to continue to do my part to help that party in Idaho be as healthy as it can be, which one small thing is to show up and vote in primaries
Yep.
and be as
And
informed
vote.
a voter as they can be.
Well, and being an informed voter is tough. Because our politicians lie a lot. And I've caught them multiple times just in the last few weeks lying straight to our faces. Russ Fulcher saying he can't vote for a bill that would allow agencies to spy on Americans without a warrant, except when you check his voting record, he did, in fact, vote for that bill.
Can I bring us back around to the May Day Strong? Because I got on the
Yeah.
voting soapbox again.
Yep.
But when it comes to taking economic and labor action, um, it is about being intentional and voting with your dollar. So pay cash to the small businesses all week
Yep.
this week. If you don't want to do anything on Friday to practice what it's like, what you do with yourself when you don't buy the latte or whatever it is that you get for your usual routine, all the better. But be mindful of where you're not putting your dollars that you actually want them to be going to. Um, Lotus, did you want to chime in on that?
I was just going to say, now it is the first. Some people will be having their rent to do that they have to pay. They'll have other bills that they have to pay. Some people might be getting their monthly paycheck or whatever. If it is not within your ability, don't have to try perfect perfectionist politic protesting nonsense. Do what you can, test it out, like Sonya says, but don't feel like you have to do everything all the time, all at once.
It's a
Yeah.
collective mindset, right? We're standing in solidarity and looking at each other and saying, "Hey, we know that we can do this. Let's start to figure out how to link arms and lean into each other." And that's where, like, I think there's a mutual aid fair coming up on May 16th, which will, just stay tuned.
16th or 17th. I'll
Yeah,
have
I'm
to
not
double
exactly
check
sure
it.
on the details, but that is for me, such a critical piece of how people can stand in solidarity. Because if we don't have the connections and community to support each other through withholding money from the current systems,
Mhm.
um, we can't actually take collective action, because you do have to pay your rent unless all of the tenants in your building are refusing to pay.
Oh,
Like,
you
there
could unionize your
Boise does
tenant.
have a tenants unions now, and
yeah.
Mhm.
we have a wheel for people to work off of. If you live in apartments with shitty landlords or you're owned by BlackRock, Boise Tenants United, this is my own personal opinion, they rock and they will do what they can to help you out. So get mad, get organized. Don't just start lobbing angry messages or Molotovs, okay?
Well, that's the thing. That's the key here is what Mayday Strong is actually promoting is this idea of starting to get organized, right? Like be mad, be as mad as you want to be, rage a bit. I mean, I certainly spend my fair share raging at the universe. I mean, obviously here I am on a podcast doing that. But the other piece of that is to get mad and then get organized. Realize that you're being taken advantage of. Realize that these people are hurting you. Realize that these quote unquote tax cuts that were given out last year and the big billionaires bailout bill didn't help you. Certainly didn't offset the cost of terrorists and the rise of the fact the 8% inflation, which is radically high, by the way. Didn't offset the cost of gas going up, didn't offset the trillions of dollars that this war is probably going to end up costing us by the time it's all said and done, and which we will get nothing for, by the way. We are in no position to win anything here. We will not come out of
We'd really
this
be winning if
victorious.
we were taking it basically from the Iranian people's backs.
Well, and
We
there's
don't
nothing to gain here. We will end up with less than we had with the JPCOA agreement under Obama, which I had a podcast about that just a couple of weeks ago where I talked about that agreement and things like that. We will end up with less than we had there and less than we could have had there. And we will end up with less control in the strait, in which it was an international body of water that was controlled, what was allowed to be internationally governed, will no longer be the case in the most likely scenario here. I don't see a way in which we don't end up with Iran controlling the strait from now until forever, because they've proven that they can. So, and that is provided, of course, we don't have to defend Taiwan and that we don't also invade Cuba. So get mad and then get organized, because the after effects of all of this stuff are going to affect you. The Jeff Bezos of the world aren't going to notice that they're paying more for gas. They don't care. It doesn't affect them, but it does affect you, and it does affect your day-to-day life. So if you can't show up, one of the reasons that we're doing the rally at 4:30 p.m. instead of in the middle of the day is to give people who maybe have less economic freedom to just be like, yeah, boss, I ain't showing up, the option to do so a little bit, just get out of work a little bit early. But if you can't do that because you're not in an economic situation, then getting involved in other ways and getting organized in other ways is to your benefit, right? Understanding that you have the actual economic power when we collectively bargain and we collectively work together is what May Day is actually about. It's about priming you to understand where the true power of this country actually comes from. It comes from the people who make stuff, who produce stuff, and who actually engage in the economic well-being of this country. The Jeff Bezos
Oh
of
my
the
gosh,
world don't
yes.
pay income taxes. They are not engaged. They do not have to engage with us peasants here on the ground. Therefore, they have no clue about what's actually happening.
Well, and
But
they
if you
aren't
get
building
organized,
anything.
they
They
don't
aren't
build
building anything.
anything. They are not the ones who generate wealth,
They
right?
are takers, not makers.
Exactly. It's the people who make shit that actually do things, who actually produce stuff, who actually are in the communities and engaged with the communities that actually make a difference and actually hold the power. We have been convinced that we do not because our pocketbooks aren't deep enough to buy a seat at Rish's fancy dinner or whatever it is. And we don't have enough economic influence for them to give a damn because we can't donate enough money to their campaigns. But the truth of the matter is that this country was organized and founded by people, just regular old people, just regular ass people getting together and making stuff happen. That is where the power lies. So on May Day, May 1st, you can send that message too. That like, hey, remember that it's the little people, it's the peasants down here who actually hold all the control and the power.
Didn't
Should
AFG
we decide to take it?
they
And
ended
just
up back in their offices, right?
Yes, they
Idaho
did because they
AFG.
stood on their business and they sued for that
It
breach of
worked.
contract, and they are back in their offices, back doing the good work at the VA.
But if they didn't sue, they wouldn't be back. They
Yep.
have to
well, and a
stand on
small
business.
reminder, rich people were never going to give us 40-hour work weeks. We fought for that shit.
Yep.
Regular ass
Unions
people
fought for that shit.
Yeah, but like unions, regular ass people fought for that shit. We would still be working 60, 70-hour work weeks if we allowed them to work us that hard.
So
And it is happening again with people having to work 2-3 jobs, right?
most people,
Because
young people
because
have
there's
to
no
work a
minimum
lot.
wage. I mean, there
Yeah.
is, but it's bullshit. And having
Idaho's
right to work states, unless they're actually being utilized for unions as a beneficial thing, it shouldn't be a fucking thing. Just point
well,
blank.
right to work isn't about the right to work. It's about the right to fire you for any reason.
Yes.
Just to make that clear, it's labeled right to
Well,
work, but that's not at all what the truth of the matter is.
so
It is
it was
purely
right
so
to
that
work for a
companies.
company that wasn't a union. So you had the right to work for a union or a non-union company, but they utilize it as a way to fire you without reason.
Yep.
And I hate it. And it needs to go away. Any other state that it's in, it needs to go the fuck away because that is bullshit. Workers demand our rights back.
Yes. So if you're wanting to do something about taking steps towards getting us out of a situation where we end up with a war in Iran, where we have to deal with ICE in our streets, where we have so much corruption in government, and our politicians don't listen to us, right? Vote May 19th. Show up for May Day strong, or practice in whatever way makes sense to you. But solidarity is so important. Getting plugged in with mutual aid, unions, that sort of thing, like that is what the heartbeat is behind May Day strong. So participate in whatever way you can. We would love to see you out there because it builds each other up to see that physical, like, hey, yes, we're all doing this. And it helps. It just makes it just works better. Like physically showing up works better, I have found, for building community.
It does.
And
That's one of the reasons we're in
tuned
this
in.
mess.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you listened to all that hour, that's fantastic. Just from my perspective of us figuring out how to work together as Idahoans, right? And yeah, what else we got, Pine?
We were going to talk about public land. Mike Simpson and Senator Risch both speaking out of both sides of their mouth in regards to public land. So
do we want to do that on a separate podcast? Because it's been an hour.
I really think public lands could be its whole own podcast.
I can rage for a very long time. I can rant and I can inform about public lands for a very, very long time. So might be something good for us to record later this week to talk about that. So yeah, I feel like that kind of brings us to an end. We're still at war with Iran. We have a looming deadline for Congress to do something or completely screw us. There is a small probability of getting a 30-day extension on that, like non-vote thing, based on some tricky language in the Constitution about it. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. I haven't fully grasped what that it is, but the bottom line is that technically, like after the end of 60 days from the start of the war in Iran is when Congress has to kind of weigh in on the subject matter. And so far, they have been mum about it. So, not just mum, they've actually said that we're liberating Iran, even though they said that that wasn't the plan. It was about the nuclear weapons, but it wasn't about that. It was about liberating Iran. And we haven't done that, by the way. We've actually replaced the former Ayatollah with the younger Ayatollah, who's even more radical. And so we haven't managed to achieve anything, much like Venezuela, in which we achieved nothing. So, but yeah, and it's costing about $1 billion a day, close to $1 billion a day to continue this. Our soldiers and the Navy, who are currently stationed in the blockade, have started rationing their food because they're not able to get resupplies in a timely fashion because we're at war. And so, it's going super well, guys. We are a superpower who has willingly practically committed seppuku, and we will never be able to claim that again because we are allowing a country who is by most measures significantly weaker than us basically dog walk us through this war.
Oh yeah, we didn't even talk about the Lego videos. That's for
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah. I get the Lego video appeal, guys, but it's all made with AI, so just, you know, be aware. It's made with AI. It's environmentally harmful. And I'm very uncomfortable with the Iranian regime having a better grasp of how to speak to the American people about the Iranian war than the United States government. That very much does not sit well with me. But, they have actual functioning adults apparently in their government, unlike us.
Well,
All right. Okay, guys, it's been almost an hour, so we're going to close that out. And that's about the time we have for this episode. If you want to get more involved in protecting our democracy or understanding our government, you can find more information at idaho5051.com. Please consider subscribing to us on Substack at idaho5051.com. Eventually, it will be the Idaho Vanguard, but it started out as just Idaho 5051, and we're building this thing as we are flying it, more or less. You can become a free or paid subscriber to help us grow the resistance. Remember to reach out to your communities and keep the lives and families destroyed by ICE in your thoughts as we battle the scourge of creeping fascism side by side. Stay informed, Guardians. We'll see you out there.
bye.
Bye.